trusty co-host, the best, the fastest researcher in the West, Camille. How are you doing tonight, Camille?
I am good. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well, keeping busy. We had a busy week last week in terms of shows and content going out last week. We had two shows. We had a bonus episode all about Kamala Harris. If you haven't checked that out, we went over her whole career in California, how she got to where she was, because we figured it was kind of, she is running for president. So it's kind of important we talk about her, and she is from California. So we did that. We had Andrew Hayes, who was a fantastic guest. Andrew's very smart and he's very knowledgeable about all the topics. So it was great to have Andrew on, again, focusing back on those local elections. And then I even snuck in a coffee in California politics. So busy week.
I missed that. I seriously feel like I missed a big social event.
I know, it's sort of a last minute thing. I was just like, yeah, you know what? I got some time. I was working from home. Why don't I hop on real quick and do a coffee in California politics real quick to kind of follow up on stuff we maybe hadn't covered in the Kamala Harris episode. So yeah, busy week. Tonight we are going to focus again on California politics, but there was big news. There was big Kamala news today. Breaking news. She has finally picked her VP. This is groundbreaking news. This is what everybody has been waiting for and hypothesizing for who she was going to pick, because everyone knows that VPs make or break tickets. But she named her VP. It will be Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. I knew a little bit about Tim Walz before this. I did a little bit more reading today.
So like I said, what's his last name?
Walz. I keep saying it's like waltz.
Yeah, you're saying it like the dance, and I don't know.
Walz?
Because there's no T. I don't know. It's WALZ, so I don't know.
I don't know. Walz? I haven't heard his name enough to say. Okay. Either way, so they picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz today. I want to really kind of comment on that quickly, and then we'll get back to what we're actually doing tonight, which is talking about Sheriff Bianco and Tony Thurmond. If you hear little feetsies in the background, Winnie is exploring the house for some reason.
My dog just started barking, so this is fun.
It must be a full moon or something. Dogs are like all over the place right now.
Heat something.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. She's like all over the place, not sleeping like normal Frenchies. Frenchies love to sleep, and she's wide awake right now. Anyway, my initial thoughts, Tim Walz. So here's what I thought. I think they were planning on picking someone like Josh Shapiro. I think they thought Josh Shapiro makes the most sense. He's from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that does make sense.
It's a big swing state. Like basically neither of these candidates can get to the White House without Pennsylvania. He's more moderate. So that helps out the ticket, kind of balances the ticket out. But in a implicit admission from the Democratic Party about how powerful the far left pro-Palestinian wing of the party is, they overlooked him and went with Tim Walz. Now, I don't know if it's because Shapiro said, I don't want to do it. Maybe he wants to wait until 2028 when he can run for president. So he's a rising star in the Democratic Party. For all those out there who kept saying it's going to be Gavin Newsom, I never thought it was going to be Gavin Newsom. Outside of the whole like 12th Amendment issue, I just never thought it would make sense to have two Californians on the ticket, and I didn't think Gavin Newsom wanted to play number two to Kamala Harris. So Josh Shapiro made the most sense. I think most political nerds who were following say, "Oh, Josh Shapiro makes the most sense. He's Pennsylvania; it's a swing state. Governor of Minnesota, that's sort of, I guess, if you're looking to your VP to help deliver a state that you desperately need." Minnesota is already kind of leaning blue. Mm-hmm. Now, it could be a swing state. It could be a toss-up. Who knows? But as of right now, it's kind of that light blue, leaning blue shade. It's more reliably Democrat. I don't think the Trump campaign looks at Minnesota and goes, we can't get to the White House without Minnesota. So it's kind of a zero-sum game for Kamala Harris in winning that state. I don't think that moves the needle. I think it also, the more you look into this Walz guy, you do see he is a far left radical progressive. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of stuff with COVID. If you look at what he did at COVID, he makes Newsom blush. So like you thought Newsom was bad on COVID.
I thought maybe they were like giving each other notes, to be honest. Well, I have not I think you, sorry, I'm interrupting you. Like an hour ago, you were like, oh, also we're going to talk about walls. And I'm like, I haven't looked into him at all. And so I sat down right before we got on and spent like 10 minutes reading about some of his stuff. So
yeah, it's not good. He was in favor of lockdowns. I know he set up a website that would allow people to snitch. We never had that in California. We never had the snitching website.
I think it was encouraged, but yeah, we never went that far.
Yeah, it was definitely encouraged by California officials to snitch, but they never set up like an official webpage like, oh, you can go snitch on your neighbors. There were some other crazy things he did
disgusting.
during COVID.
That's absolutely disgusting.
What, like snitching on your neighbors?
Snitching on your neighbors, encouraging that. And
yeah, wasn't it Dr. Fauci who was like, even then he was like, if you see people who are going to Thanksgiving, make sure you report them to the authorities. Like that, he was literally telling people like report people going to Thanksgiving to the authorities, and it's like as if like the sheriff or the police are going to show up and be like, who cares? These people are celebrating Thanksgiving.
Yeah, there was a Thanksgiving celebration here today on Thanksgiving. You're all under.
Yeah, I don't think people really cared about that. There were some other things he did, and now it's escaping me what he did. But he was pretty radical on COVID. Big lockdown guy, big supporter of lockdowns, big supporter of snitching on people, lockdowns. But also he was fine with BLM protests. So he was a strict lockdown governor, but he was also we need to allow BLM to peacefully protest, allowing, hundreds, if not thousands of people to gather for the BLM protests. The picture that has been memed into the legendary status is the one with the, mostly peaceful protest and the guy standing in front of like a burning building. That was Minnesota. So his state was basically ground zero for a lot of BLM activity. And he was obviously in support of BLM. There's a lot of social issues. He's also very far left on in terms of trans rights. He signed a law that required tampons to be in boys' bathrooms all over the place. So I don't know. The more if putting a uber progressive on the ticket with Kamala Harris, who is already uber progressive, is a good idea. I think it gives him plenty of food for fodder in terms of attack ads. That's for sure. The Trump campaign has plenty of food for fodder for attack ads, as well as their super PACs that are sitting on enormous war chests of money that will just run these attack ads through the Rust Belt all the way up until the election. So does it hurt? It could hurt her, but
he was for like more gun background checks.
He's for more gun background checks.
So those flyover states not gonna like that.
So while Kamala is trying to like backpedal and say like, oh, I don't want to ban fracking. Who said I'm not banning fracking? Oh, I'm not for gun confiscation, which are both plays for like Pennsylvania. I don't know if this Governor Walz is going to actually backpedal on a lot of his stuff as well. Something interesting the other day, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about like the VP and who they could pick. And you and I are political nerds, like, to put it lightly. We spend a lot of time talking about politics. We spend a lot of time reading about politics. And they brought up Hillary Clinton in 2016. And for the life of me, it took me about a good 10 or 15 seconds being like, who the heck was her VP candidate? Like, do you remember who it is? I remember.
I knew that's where you were going when you said that. I'm like, shoot, this is taking me longer than 10 or 15 seconds. So who was it?
It was Tim Kaine from Virginia.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it took me a while to be like, who was her VP? And I guess because my point is that like VPs are sort of inconsequential overall. Like people aren't running to the polls because they're like, I'm going to vote for this ticket because I love that VP. And I think that VP is going to do wonderful things.
Right.
They're kind of inconsequential. They don't really move the needle as much as people think they do. even, and especially when you're the losing party, like then nobody really remembers who your
Exactly.
VP is, because like you lost, no one cares who your VP is. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't think it's the best pick for her, and I think there's already mumblings on X that like the Democrats have a real bad anti-Semitism problem, and I don't know how they address that, because while she may say, "Oh, this guy was great, and this is why I picked him, and he's such a leader," and you know all the platitudes they say. But I think the real reason we all know she didn't pick Josh Shapiro is because they didn't want the party to tear itself apart over this Israel-Palestine issue. So Democrats have a real anti-Semitism issue. How they convey that to voters, especially Jewish Democratic voters, I don't know. Does Trump make a play for Jewish Democrat voters in New York and make it a little scary? Who knows? I don't know. But it's we've got our tickets. We've got the 2 VPs and we got the 2 presidents. At this point, I think she's locked in. I don't think they're going to do a switcheroo. Some people are saying they're going to do a switcheroo at the convention.
I don't think so. They've already, like, the party has rallied around her. I mean, I'm sure you have Democrat friends that are already like, hurrah. I know I do. I have friends from Minnesota who are very excited about this ticket. So, you know.
Yeah, and just like both sides, I wasn't jazzed about when they picked JD Vance. I wasn't like
that
over the moon being like,
yes, this is it.
I wasn't like jumping up and down and going, oh my God, JD Vance is such a great pick. I was like, I don't really know a lot about JD Vance. Doesn't really change my feelings about him.
And let's be honest, we weren't going to like anyone she picked. Like that,
yeah, I mean,
as Republicans, we were not going to be like, oh my God, she chose that person and I love that person and now I'm going to vote for her. Like that.
No. And I think that's like you see a lot of these social media posts of like things that never happened, of people being like, oh, now that she picked Tim Walz, you know, I'm a MAGA guy, but I'm going to be voting. I think it's time for a woman president. And it's like,
right.
I
don't know. Like you said, I don't know that it moved the needle really. Yes, there's a few people out there. Like I have liberal friends who were not going to vote for Biden. They were very like, I will not vote for Biden. I will absolutely vote for Trump. Biden not happening, but Biden's out now. And so I don't know where they stand over, you know, with Trump and versus Kamala. Like I haven't talked to them since. And so I have no idea where some of these that were kind of like never Biden's again, like, you know, bye Biden. I don't know.
Yeah. And we have to keep in mind a lot of this is like which has always been my theory, and I think people are picking up on it, or other people are saying this, not picking up on my theory. I think this is just a general theory that people are saying, is that the honeymoon is going to start waning for Kamala Harris. Like it was 2 weeks ago. Like it's crazy to think this was like 2 weeks ago that Kamala Harris jumped into the race. And yeah, she's enjoyed a bump. She's enjoyed that honeymoon bump of everyone astroturfing social media, making it seem like she's the greatest thing to come to the Democratic Party since Barack Obama. I don't think Tim Walz continues the honeymoon. At some point, she has to actually get out on the campaign trail and tell people like what her policies are. So because so far, I don't know what her policies are, or like what she stands for. I saw a video where they asked her on, was it The View, about the economy, and it was just complete word salad.
Just another SNL skit.
Yeah, and she kind of went around and around, and then somehow linked the economy.
Inflation is high. Things cost more. Yes.
And therefore, because prices are high, we pay more. And because of the high prices, we pay more But she was talking about like defending democracy and abortion. And you're like, how did you get from the economy to defending democracy?
Because that's
like,
all you have to do. Women's rights. That's all you have
That's the only 2 talking points they ever had. It was like,
oh yes, the economy. Yes, we're we'll get there. Anyway, abortion. And then everyone's like, yes, women's rights, birth control, abortion. This is what we need, because if Trump gets elected, we're all what was that? The Handmaid's. I don't even know. I never watched that or read that book. Which is funny that people say that, because Trump was president for 4 years and didn't do any of those things that they're saying he's going to do, that they already said he was going to do before he was president.
Yeah. He's going to do all the things that they were fear-mongering about in 2016 that he never ended up doing when he was president for 4 years. But now all of a sudden it's really going to come true. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Kamala, because she's a politician from California and it's presidential year. So why not? Let's just talk about presidential.
Regarding the honeymoon phase, though, I do think after the DNC, when they she's the official, even though I think she's already the official, but once it's official that she's the nominee, I think that there will be a renewed honeymoon phase. But then that's probably when she's going to really start campaigning and releasing what her policies are. And then that's probably when things will either go up or go down. We'll start to see.
Yeah, we'll start seeing it. And if you want to get a little technical, if you look at the Real Clear Politics average, popular vote, has she snuck in front of Donald Trump? Yeah. But is this her peak? Is this it for her? She isn't blowing up. She isn't matching what Hillary Clinton did or what Biden did. So if this is her peak, that's not very good for them, because it means it's going to be a lot closer. I think it's also funny enough, I think it's good for the Republicans that it is a lot closer now, because I think before it was such a landslide that you take advantage of the fact that it's going to be a landslide, we don't have to do anything. But I think it spurred the Republican Party into action to be okay, we have to get off our butts now, and this is a real race now. So we'll see. We still got a long time to go. It's crazy how 15 days, 2 weeks is it feels like an eternity since she's been named, or anointed the presumptive nominee. Who knows what's going to happen? Ballots are
going to drop in about 90 days ish.
Right. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of mail-in ballots going out soon. So
yeah.
They almost.
I know we're going to move on, but I just want to know if you would support a dance-off between Trump and Harris.
Sure. Why not? Trump could do his little.
They both like to get him a dance.
Yeah, she could do whatever dance she does, and Trump does his little YMCA dance, and that's how we decide the presidency, because that's how ridiculous some politics has gotten.
I don't think that's how we should decide, but
that's how we decide.
I feel like people could maybe make decisions based on.
You can be well, I liked his dance better, so
I'm
going to vote for him. All right. Anyway, on to more California news, because before you know it, presidential election will be over, and you know what's right around the corner for us here in California? The governor's race, and it will not involve Gavin Newsom. It will involve a whole new cast of characters not named Gavin Newsom.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. This is totally not what we're talking about. Obviously, he cannot run for governor again, and we think he wants to run for president. Do you think he's going to just not run for anything come 2026 and maybe just stay politically active?
Yeah, I think he'll probably, if Trump wins, I think he steps away from the governor's mansion, and then he goes off and preps his presidential run with his huge war chest that he's sitting on for campaign of democracy or whatever. Okay. Because it does take a long time to set up, and usually they announce a year before, right? Isn't it
I think it starts about yeah,
it'd be 2027. He would, he'd be out of office January 2027, which would put him perfectly to announce running in the primaries.
True.
So it almost lines up perfectly for him to step away from.
To start campaigning, yes.
He'll just roll.
Assuming Harris is not president.
Assuming Harris is not president, right? If Trump wins, that's probably going to be mark it down on this date. in 2024. We called it. He'll start running in January 2027. He'll announce January, February. He'll announce his run for presidency. If we come back, we get to say, I told you so. All right. So if most of you didn't know, it was our friend Danielle who actually was like, hey, there's a debate on tonight. And I didn't even know there was a debate. So thank you, Danielle, for letting us know that there was this debate. It was a short debate. It was Tony Thurmond versus Chad Bianco, Sheriff Chad Bianco. It's only 22 minutes long, but it was on Fox 11. So we want to go over it mostly because Tony Thurmond has announced he's running for governor. And Sheriff Bianco, there's a lot of rumors he will run for governor. So this is possibly a preview of two candidates who will be running for governor for California.
I also want to say I appreciate Alex Mickelson for, if I pronounced his name correctly, because it was his show. The issue is, right, that did this.
Yes.
He moderated along with someone else, and I feel like he was very fair.
Yeah, like, he's not bad, Alex.
Yeah.
Our good friend, Alex Michelson. And I say that just because we met him at the...
We met him. He's like, who are you?
He's like, yeah, who are you?
We're like, well, now you're our best friend.
Yeah, you're our best friend now. So yeah, good on him for getting this to happen. I think it's it's not a bad thing to have people get on a show. And
I think more people should debate, to be honest. Yeah, more people in office, even if they're not necessarily going to run against each other. I think it brings up, it exposes a lot of issues, or gives, at least we can see the different sides of where people stand on it. Thinking of like the Newsom versus DeSantis debate, that was so random, but I think it was great. Mm-hmm. I think there should be more of that. I'd watch it all day long.
Yeah, I think.
Good, let's start a TV show.
Debates.
Okay, let's get to this. I'm sorry.
And we'll call it Let's Talk.
No, you can't. Like, hey, we'll talk about it off Camerville. You can't have.
No, we can't be giving away ideas.
Don't give away all of our ideas.
Everyone will be sitting over coffee and talking.
You have to say coffee. You're California now.
Coffee. Anyway, so here's the debate. We're going to kind of watch it and then comment, give our thoughts on this, and then, give our final thoughts. So away we go. This is the Tony Thurmond, Chad Bianco debate on Fox 11.
I think it's time we put a felon in the White House.
Well, that's Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco in a now viral post on Instagram from back in June, where he endorsed Donald Trump for president. Now, shortly after Trump was convicted in his New York hush money trial. That video, Bianco in his uniform, eliciting calls from Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond for an investigation and a debate.
Making an endorsement in a state taxpayer-funded uniform and badge would seem to violate the rules that we have. If the sheriff wants to be governor, I think that there ought to be a debate.
Well, with more, we are joined by Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco and California's Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here and taking the time out. We made it happen. Good to have you. We're going to start with that very incident. I'll start with you, Superintendent Thurmond. Where does that investigation stand? Have you gone to the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta, to open an investigation into the sheriff?
My understanding is that there are some who are looking into it. But again, we're here because I was just struck that you'd have someone who would say that they want a felon in the White House. And as many of the issues that we're talking about have to deal with public safety, just a concern that someone would advocate for a person who tried to overthrow our government. And in doing so, cause the harm of many people, including police officers. And so.
Okay, pause.
Get the content all in one place with Riverside.
Well, commercial break anyway.
Commercial break.
All right.
Yeah.
So, first off, she right off the bat asks Tony Thurmond, have you filed a complaint or something to open an investigation into this? And he says, my understanding is there's people doing it. And then he brushes it off and then goes off to say the reason we're here is because he said, he wants a felon in the White House. Obviously, we know that's like some little tongue-in-cheek thing that people are saying, which I think it's cringe, of like, I'm voting for a felon. Like, cute, get out of here. And Tony is very intelligent, and he knows that. He knows that that's exactly what Sheriff Bianco is saying and doing. Like, he's just doing the little cringy felon in the White House thing. But what he's really mad about is that Sheriff Bianco endorsed Trump. Like, let's not pretend that if he had endorsed Biden, because that was who the nominee was at the time, Tony Thurmond would have never, ever said anything. And so he keeps switching his reasons for why this debate is happening. This debate is happening because he endorsed somebody while in uniform. This debate is happening because he endorsed someone who tried to overthrow the government. This debate is happening because he wants to run for governor. Like, what is it? And if you are actually concerned, you go open the freaking investigation yourself. Sheriff Bianco is an elected official. The FPPC is wide open for complaints. You and I have done plenty of them. Tony Thurmond has been in office long enough, and he's a super intelligent man, and he knows this. And so for him to deflect, to be like, I believe someone else is looking into that. You're the one with the issue. You take care of it. Don't wait around for someone else to solve your problems. And this is to everyone. Like, quit crying like, oh, this happened. What are we going to do? Someone needs to fix it. Go fix it yourself. Go complain yourself. Like, come on. So that's my commentary 1 minute into this.
No, I agree. And if there's anybody who has access to the tools and the levers to make this investigation happen, it will be Tony Thurmond. He's up there in Sacramento as the head of an entire State Department. I'm sure he has Rob Bonta's cell phone number. I'm sure he knows where his office is. This comment was made, I don't know how many months ago. It was a long time ago, because when was Trump found guilty? I don't know. I feel like we did that episode a long time ago.
Is that April, May?
Yeah, it was several months ago. And like, there's been no news of whether or not there's been an investigation opened into Sheriff Bianco. And you would think in California, they would pounce on the opportunity if this was legitimate. They would have pounced on the opportunity, and Rob Bonta, because they'll get into it later, but Tony Thurmond and Rob Bonta did not wait at all when they wanted to bring the hammer down on Chino Valley with with like the transgender power.
Tony Thurmond literally showed up.
Yeah, he literally showed up at the meeting. Like, he took the opportunity to go there. Rob Bonta made a whole big thing about it. Newsom made a whole big thing about it. So the fact that he's kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of like pussyfooting around, like, well, there might be an investigation. Some people are looking into it. And it's like, nobody's looking into this. Like, if they really want to make an example of Sheriff Bianco, who is wildly popular here in California, likely, if he announces, likely to be the majority, like overwhelming front runner for the Republican Party to be the gubernatorial candidate in 2028. This would have happened already. So yeah. And if his reason is, well, you're a taxpayer, you're sitting in a taxpayer funded car and you're doing you're paid by the taxpayers. Well, then, like, I guess no politicians and nobody elected can ever endorse anybody.
But he wants to make it about the uniform. But like, that's probably how Tony Thurmond shows up to work. So he's technically in uniform here. And
yeah,
I mean, sorry, but Tony Thurmond's being a little bitch about this.
Did you use your taxpayer-funded salary to buy that suit that you have? Is that taxpayer-funded uniform you're wearing right now, Tony Thurmond? Is that like, so, that's one of the lamest reasons to say, well,
where is this show? Is this show recorded in LA? He probably used tax dollars to fly to it. I don't know where. I think he lives up north. Anyway.
I would imagine so, in Sacramento. I mean, Riverside, Sheriff Bianco probably just drove over.
Right.
But, yeah, it's already sort of a bad start for Tony Thurmond, that like he's trying to, and you can see like Sheriff Bianco's already sitting there.
He's like rolling his eyes.
He's like rolling his eyes. He's like smirking. He's like, this is like, oh man, this is really what he's going to try and bring up right out of the gate. So, all right, let's keep going.
Hey, was that a bit of a...
It actually is. There are many things that are concerning to me that he just said, but the biggest one was him coming online and trying to somehow, truly, it was him get a little bit of fame for his governor run off of a viral video. And the disturbing thing for me was that we have the person in charge of education in our state that failed to educate himself, do his homework about whether or not it was true or not that I violated some law. And then he went on national or local news saying that I did, and he repeatedly social media saying that I have violated these laws. So the truth of the matter is, I did not. I have spoken to numerous investigators over the last 5 years because there's always people that don't know the law and they complain and they file complaints. I have spoken to local investigators and federal investigators, and regardless of what he thinks, the sheriff does not apply to that law or that rule, and I am exempt because I'm an elected official, and specifically the office of sheriff does not apply to that. A chief of police would, one of my employees would, and then a technical part of the law that, of course, he didn't educate himself on, is that I am not considered an officer or an employee of the sheriff's department. I am the elected sheriff of Riverside County, and I am separate from the employees of the organization.
If I could, thoughts on that,
if I could,
and the fact that he's wearing the uniform today.
Again, anyone can make a mistake, but when the sheriff doubled down as an elected official to say that it's his badge, his uniform, he can do with it what he wants, I think that's disrespectful to the people who elect us. There are rules. It's not about whether or not you're elected or you're a rank and file officer. There are clearly established rules that say that public officials, elected officials, don't engage in politics when we are on the clock, when we are working. And that's all we were saying.
There are no laws that say that. And the fact that we're sitting here talking about things that are not true. And now I have told everyone, including yourself, that you are completely wrong. You have accused me of committing a crime multiple times on television and your social media. Anytime you want to fix it and apologize, I'll wait.
There is no open investigation into the sheriff.
My office doesn't have the power to do an investigation. We're reaching out to state agencies that can. And this is not the first time that this has happened. There's been a LA County sheriff who did the same thing, made a political endorsement in uniform, and he took it back. And you doubled down on it, and that just said
there are things like the Hatch Act and other things where you're not supposed to do official work.
So I will let people bury themselves as much as they want. And when it keeps getting worse and worse and worse, then I'll show you the letters. I guarantee.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. So Thurmond just brought up that there was an LA sheriff something who did this and then took it back. Okay, that's cowardly. Cool story, bro, but that's being a coward. I'm so tired of these, I was, people complained or people didn't like what I said, and so I take it back. No, I don't. Stand by what you say. I mean, if you found out that you were absolutely wrong, then you should say I was wrong. But this was a matter of opinion that he's talking about. Somebody endorsed somebody. That's their opinion, is that person is the best person for the job. And so he's encouraged, well, you need to take it back. Nope. No take backs. That's just cowardly. So Tony Thurmond supports cowardly behavior. Not cool.
Well, Tony Thurmond supports bullying people into submission. I think that's what it comes down to. I think that's what he's a fan of. Clearly, we've seen that in his history, that he's a fan of bullying people into submission.
Yes.
And again, this comes back to the fact that if this was so wrong and so illegal, every sheriff's department in California has legal counsel, whether it's counsel that works for him or it's outside counsel. There's lawyers everywhere. And if there was a problem with what Sheriff Bianco did and legal counsel stepped in and said, Sheriff, you shouldn't have done that, because based on this law, you shouldn't have done this, then maybe he'd have to retract it and go back. But the fact that it's been so long and there's been no consequence, there's been no investigation, there's nothing going on, makes me think that, Sheriff Bianco's right. You can do what he's saying. And it's funny how Tony Thurmond backpedaled on his original claim where he's well, he shouldn't do it when he's in uniform or with the badge on, or public officials can't do that. And then he kind of changed the parameters of why he thinks this is all wrong. So he just doesn't like that he endorsed Trump, like you said. He doesn't like that he endorsed Trump, and he doesn't like that he's not backing down. So
and he probably, even though there's no official announcement yet, there's obviously lots of chatter. I'm sure that he would like to tear down Bianco now before, like hopefully get him out.
Yeah,
Which
he'd
is
like to
funny
draw first
because
blood. So
I think Bianco's great, but I don't think, and obviously we're going to have a couple years before we even see this, but I don't see a Republican getting elected as governor of California next election. But Tony Thurmond's over there shaking in his tax-paid dollar shoes. So it's kind of funny.
maybe, yeah. If nothing else, the one that if somebody had asked me about like why it's important having a governor like who can speak out, and even though there's a way outside chance of them winning here in California, I still think it's important to have an outspoken Republican governor who is going to at least use their platform to call out everything that's wrong with California.
Well, and he has a track record of doing so.
And he has a track record, and he's very popular. I think that goes a long way to get people. It's kind of like the whole presidential, like you want to help the down ballots. It kind of helps the idea of like, you want to get people engaged. You want to get people knowledgeable about the issues. You want to call out what's going on in California. It kind of reminds me of like Travis Allen. Like Travis Allen was very outspoken. He was very, no holds barred. He was wildly popular. The Republican Party decided we like people with money, so they went with John Cox instead, and like killed all of his momentum. But I think like he was a great Republican candidate because he had no issue calling Newsom out. So maybe that's why they're going after him now, because they're like, we want to knock him down a bit so that he doesn't cause problems and get people all riled up in 2026. So
guarantee you, if he complained, which I think he did, they won't tell me, they block out the address, but he got the same letter that they send me and say, this is what we gave them. And it explains that the office of sheriff is different.
Let's talk about public safety, which you know a lot about. You do too, as well, of course. But you, as sheriff, you're very much against Prop 47. There is a ballot on the upcoming election in November to amend Prop 47, which for our viewers, a little refresher that this reclassifies non-violent crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. And on the ballot this November will be Prop 36, which is the amendment to Prop 47. Right. Why is this the answer, in your belief, to solving the crime public safety issue?
This isn't the end-all answer, but we know from a public safety standpoint, and really the voters know, 80% of the population of California knows that Prop 47 has been the beginning of the end. Really was AB 109, but Prop 47 then started the ball rolling. The beginning of the end for public safety in California, whether you're talking about homeless, whether you're talking about drugs, whether you're talking about theft, all of those things drastically increased. And you can look and see the drastic increase since 47. Everyone knows what those consequences were going to be. We told the legislature what those consequences were going to be, and we've tried to get it fixed. We know now that we were 100% lied to by our state government, specifically our attorney general, who happens to be the person he's endorsing for president now. And we were sold a bill of goods with the Safe Streets and Safe Schools initiative, which we know now had nothing to do with safe streets and safe schools. It was about decriminalization. It was about no accountability for criminal behavior, raising the limits of theft, no accountability for drugs. It should be a crime of what we have done with drugs and the homeless, in that we cannot get them into services now, and that was all taken away by Prop 47.
So this effort to reform Prop 47, now Prop 36, has been supported by some liberal Democrats, including the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor of San Jose. Do you support it?
First thing I want to say, just in correction, Sheriff, the legislature didn't pass Prop 47.
The people
of California
did. An overwhelming vote.
But to that point, people are tired of having their cars broken into, their homes and their businesses. I myself have had 2 different times a car broken into, my daughter's car stolen. We do need accountability. And I've been on a lot of police ride-alongs. I come from a law enforcement family. I was raised by 2 police officers. My brother's retired police. And as I talk to officers, they talk about arresting the same person twice in the same night. Yes, there has to be reform. We're taking a look at Prop 36. I'm working with a lot of legislators right now as we speak to create real consequences for those who commit retail theft, to go after those rings who are helping to steal the stuff and then sell it again on eBay and other places. We need change, but just locking people up is not the solution. We need intervention programs. And as governor, I would start a campaign immediately to put 2,000 more officers on the streets of California to help keep our communities safe and to build intervention programs to also make sure that we have a way to prevent the crime.
So do you back Prop 36?
I'm taking a look at it right now as we speak.
You don't know yet.
But
He like refuses to agree with Bianco on anything. Like,
I love Bianco's reaction where he's just like, "Are you kidding me?" Like literally went back in his chair. If you're on audio and you didn't see it, he literally went back in his chair, rolled his eyes, and put his hands up. Like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, it's funny seeing Democrats. I mean, this would have been a good point to bring up. Is like, well, why did your party try and kill Prop 36 all these times? Why did your party try and introduce poison pill legislation? Why is your party so afraid to let like that's the big question for me is like, why are Democrats so afraid of Prop 36 passing? Like,
well, he just London Breed apparently supports it. I didn't know that, but Alex just said that.
Mm-hmm. And it's, well, she's trying to moderate because San Francisco is obviously in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, there's a whole mess. But right now, he couldn't even say, I agree with a lot that's in there or anything. Like, it's like he just wants to straight up be like, I'm not with you on anything, Bianco. Like, no, we're not going to agree here. Like, no, there's no like, certainly we can reach across the aisle and agree on this.
Yeah, like we definitely need to do something about this. And Prop 36, it's been passed by the voters in a democratic process.
Whatever.
But they can't. It just goes to my theory, which is always, I think, 100% accurate, is that politicians will never, ever, ever, ever admit they were wrong and that they have to admit defeat. And I think Democrats in California will never, ever, ever, ever admit that Prop 47 and AB 109, all these bills that they did to kind of go soft on crime were an absolute disaster. They will never admit that they made a mistake. They will go back. They will try and tweak it. They'll try and say we can reform it. They'll say, like, he's talking about like working with people on different legislation. It's like, okay, you're the superintendent. You're not in the legislative process.
No, he was former assembly, right? So maybe he
was former assembly, right? So
he's still in that mode or something. He forgot what job he was elected to do twice. I don't know.
Yeah, because clearly it's not like helping education since we're ranked towards the bottom of it.
Oh, they'll get to that.
We'll get to that, but. It's always true. Politicians will never ever admit that they were wrong about something, and Prop 47 is such a perfect example of like, they'll never admit that they were wrong on Prop 47, which was was named by now presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Was it the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act or something like that? It was like totally misleading. They'll never admit that they were wrong. So that's why they always kind of just talk around the subject of like, well, we need to do this. We need to put 2,000 police officers on the. We probably need way more than 2,000 police officers.
You probably need 2,000 in San Diego alone, city, not county.
Yeah, you probably need 2,000 in San Francisco right now or LA. Like 2,000 in the state is like, okay, so that's not a lot of people.
2,000 additional people at the border, like.
Yeah, we need about 2,000 more people at the border, not like the 6.
I guess it's a start, but can we do that like 2,000 a month?
Can we put like 2,000 California National Guard at the border right now? Like that would be a start. Anyway, so this is one where I think Bianco obviously has the upper hand. He knows way more about this than Tony Thurmond. It's not his area of expertise, and he's trying to make it sound like he's making this assertive move on public safety.
All this working with legislators, authoring whatever. Like, okay, maybe that's why education's failing in California.
You're not paying attention to what you're supposed to be doing. So,
I support legislation that creates more accountability for anyone who commits a crime.
His entire time in the legislature was supporting criminals. His first bill was a benefit to a criminal, not the victims. You gave more credits, time credits for credit time served, so they didn't have to pay court-imposed fines and costs. That was your first bill. You did it. Are you going to deny it?
You're missed it.
Are you going to deny it?
Let him answer.
He repeatedly voted for soft on crime policies. He voted for the sanctuary state law. He voted to remove the enhancements, the automatic enhancements for repeat criminals. He voted to remove the enhancements for criminals convicted of gun crimes, while wanting to make law-abiding gun owners criminals.
Go ahead and respond.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak. What is your vision for public safety? As I've said, I'll put 2,000 officers on the street. I'm working right now in real time with legislators to create more consequences and accountability for
his policy is Prop 36. That's his policy.
Well, go on.
Keep playing.
No, I was allowed to. You finished your comment because.
Oh, no, that was.
I interrupted.
That was all. Prop 36. That's his position.
So we have, though. I don't know if you in the notes. We have what Sheriff Bianco was talking about, and it was in 2015. AB 1375 that Thurmond authored, and it was exactly what Sheriff Bianco said, that increase the amount of credits. I think it was even people that were in for felonies as well I don't fully understand it, and I sent it to you or added it to the notes hoping that you could get all lawyer about it, but maybe you don't want to. But also when he's like, I appreciate the chance to respond, he doesn't deny or say, yes, I did author this X, Y, and Z. He immediately deflects and goes, you. And it's like, answer the damn question. And so I already see how he's going to be as a politician. I mean, he is a politician, but when he's running for governor, I already see he's just not going to be able to answer questions. He's not going to give straight answers. If he even does actual real debate up on stage with people that are actually running, he's just going to deflect everything and just not he won't even answer. He won't give real responses, which I get that's their whole game, but I'm tired of it.
From what I understood from this law is AB 1375 is it's about fines, and you can't imprison someone if they can't pay a fine, and they lowered the amount for the daily fines. And they can be
there was two, and I think I only sent the one, and I don't understand these how they're authored, so I'm like, can you just
can I just
I don't want to try and understand. I have you. Can you just explain it?
Can I just lawyer it up?
Please.
Well, that was the one I was looking at. So why don't we keep watching, and I'll see if I can find it, and then I'll see if I can lawyer it up for you.
For anyone who commits a crime, whether it be retail theft or anything. In my experience as an elected official, I've done more to help reduce violent crimes in the cities that I've represented, by building strong programs, working with law enforcement. What's your vision?
I think you just made that whole thing up. But basically, I've spent 31 years in law enforcement, on the front lines of law enforcement, trying to keep people safe, arresting the same people over and over, while the people in Sacramento, repeatedly voted for soft on crime policies, making us less safe, more rights and benefits to criminals than actual.
So how do you respond to that, Superintendent? I mean, what he's saying is that in the past, your proposals were soft on crime. How do you respond to that? You're talking about the future, but in terms of your past voting record.
I disagree with the blatant mischaracterizations that the sheriff is making. It sounds like you're making this personal. I asked you what your vision was for keeping our state safe. I haven't heard you say that. You're looking for ways to attack my record that speaks for itself. Yes, I led programs that are record proven in the country for reducing violent crime in our communities, and I will continue to do that here in our state.
Let me ask you, you have made the official announcement to run for governor in 2026.
That's correct.
Why haven't you taken the time to formulate an opinion about Prop 36, because it is such a controversial and important ballot?
They're going to pass it or not. I've spent the last several weeks working on measures that I think are important to this state, including how do we give immediate consequences to those who commit crimes. Those bills are going to be passed any day now. And I've been working on that, as well as building programs.
So he, said you didn't, Thurmond said to Bianco, you haven't given a plan for your safety. Again, Bianco has not said he's running for governor. There's chatter. People want him to, but he hasn't said I'm running for governor. Therefore, I don't know why he's supposed to have all these plans in place. Because what if he doesn't run for governor? Why is he going to have plans? And then now here we go with Thurmond again with all the measures he's working on. Thurmond, you have a job.
Yeah.
Superintendent.
You have a job right now that you should be doing, and you're already running for governor 2 years away. Like,
please do your job. It's summer break. Like, you could be working on things that, could be implemented into fixing education for this coming school year that now is going to start in this month. I guess most schools start this month. I forget, we're already in August. And so it's like, he's like looking at Bianco like, well, where's your plan? Well, that's not my job, bro.
So there was another bill that I found regarding, this was SB 10, establishes new provisions for the criminal justice system, that he voted on. And he voted in support of, requires the Department of Corrections to conduct a pretrial risk assessment of individuals before they are released without bail, prohibits defendants charged with public offenses and deemed a high risk from being released from custody with money bail, authorizes the individual or entity in charge of jail to approve and sign a pretrial release order with the collection of money bail. Defines that a release agreement will include the following information: a promise to appear at all court-ordered times and places, a promise not to depart the state of California, an agreement to waive extradition, agreement to obey all laws and orders by the court. This is one that I think, in terms of pretrial assessment, they kind of look at whether or not they should let this person out. And this is sort of the whole thing with bail and how do you set bail. Reading between the lines, this seems like it went softer on bail and made it harder to keep people in jail on bail. So if you're looking for an example, SB 10 is one law that he voted in support of.
Okay.
So
programs to support some of our important needs in the state. Just yesterday, we launched a new campaign that's going to allow us to build 2 million more housing units in the state. I'm working on addressing homelessness. And of course,
why is the superintendent working on homelessness? That's not your job.
It's going to be a really long podcast just because we're just so annoyed at this guy for not doing his job. I'm going to go file a complaint with the FPPC about this guy, literally not doing his job. And here he's fully admitting it, he's busy with all these other random things. Oh my gosh. I want an
dereliction of duty. He's coming after Sheriff Bianco because he recorded a phone video supporting Trump. And now he's like, here I am. I'm working on stuff for homelessness and, things for housing. And it's that's not your job.
I still
believe
believe
that's your job.
Lance Christensen would have been done much better if they hadn't put him at the tiny bottom of the ballot under the judges, where most people, I don't think, look, because most people don't pay attention to judges. And so I think that Lance would have been almost tied with Tony Thurmond.
Yeah, he kind
Random opinion. Sorry, has nothing to do with this, but
ballot placement is a big thing. And Lance is a good guy who knows a lot about it. I'm sure Lance watches this and pulls his hair out.
Well, and Lance actually has, he's an educator. He has a history in education.
Yeah, this wasn't, this wasn't a step up for him from the legislature so that he could pave his way for governorship.
Well,
but,
and
in 2 million homes, I never get the idea of we're working on stuff to build 2 million homes. And it's why is the government getting involved in building homes? The government shouldn't be involved in building. The one way the government can help build homes is to get the hell out of the way. That's the way you get the government to help build homes, is you gut and get rid of CEQA, and you reduce all the taxes and regulations on builders, and away we go. You let the developers come in and build a crap ton of homes, and that's how you increase home supply. But the government should not be working on building 2 million homes. That's not your role. Let the free market figure it out. Just get out of the way.
if that is their role, would you be like, oh yeah, the superintendent of education should definitely be working on that?
Definitely be on this right now. If there's things that I think the superintendent of education should be on, it's definitely homelessness and building housing.
And crime and safety. Crime and safety is important for schools, but I
shouldn't be at the top of the list though.
Of course, crime and safety issues in the state. And so that's where I put my
And these are
priority.
housing units on public land, right? With
School districts.
Yeah.
District plan, which is a whole nother.
Well, we're going to talk
boondoggle
about
in itself.
education in our next break. So our conversation
have a housing
with
plan, Sheriff?
Superintendent Thurmond and Sheriff
I have
Bianco.
an education plan.
It
like
will
to hear it.
continue. We'll talk
Let's
education
make it a break.
when we come back. Stay with us.
And welcome back to Fox 7 News at 6.
Again, we got to keep moving along here, but why is he asking if Sheriff Bianco, who is a sheriff of a county, has a housing plan?
because
He's not running for governor. Why does it matter what he says about housing? Maybe Sheriff Bianco's too busy, I don't know, actually doing his job to come up with doing like what he's supposed to do, not coming up with housing solutions. So
I do love how snarky Sheriff Bianco is. I appreciate that he's not holding back.
Yep. And that's why I think he'll make a good candidate. Is he'll go to the mat with a lot of these Democrat candidates. Whether he wins or not will be, we don't know. Far outside chance, but it will be fun to see him go in there, no holds barred.
I'm Ellis Michelson.
And I'm Marla Tejas. Now back to our special debate. We turn to the issue of education. Earlier this month, as we reported right here on Fox 11, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 1955. The controversial bill prohibits California school districts from notifying parents about a student's desire to change sexual orientation or gender identity. Proponents say the law protects LGBTQ plus students. Opponents who have already filed a lawsuit challenging the law say it violates the rights of parents.
Now back to our special debate between California Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond and Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. So, Mr. Superintendent, since this is your purview,
yes.
Let's start with you.
Yes.
You support this. Why is it a good idea?
I've worked on SB 1955, and here are the facts. Actually, it does nothing to block the.
I'm not going to get into this bill, but isn't this AB 195? And he says SB, which that's not a big deal, but he's talking about how he's read this so much or worked on it so much, and then he has no idea who actually the Assembly or the Senate. And so, yeah, I won't get into it. We've obviously discussed this one a million times. Anyone can go back and look at probably any podcast from the last 2 months, and we have totally gone over AB 1955 a million times. So carry on.
The rights of parents. It actually says that when there are any discussions that are going to take place about a child's sexual orientation, that conversation should happen between that child and their parent. We don't want government involved in making decisions about our children. Is that something that you'd want to see? I know you're going to speak against this matter, but actually what it does is it protects young people.
I'm going to stop it right here. No. That's exactly why there are opponents to AB 1955 is they do not want the government involved in these situations and making these decisions. And you have now legalized public employees to make these decisions and have the government get involved. So yes, to answer your question, Mr. Thurmond, no, we don't want the government involved, which is why people are opposed to AB 1955. Also, this, I think I paused it on the perfect shot. If you can see Sheriff Bianco's face, he's just like, "Oh, I cannot wait to tear this guy a new one."
From being forcibly outed. And research shows that when you target LGBTQ plus students in this way, you propel them towards suicide. 40% of LGBTQ plus kids are experiencing or considering suicide. But when you do the opposite and you support them, they do better in school, they have better attendance. And it is just a misnomer for those who have said that this takes away parent rights. This actually reaffirms the rights that parents and their family should have to work on these issues.
I got to say something. I said I wasn't going to go off, but he just said it right there. He said, when you support them, they do better in school. They're showing up, they're working hard or whatever, they're happier, they're having less suicidal thoughts or whatever. And this is why we need to support them. but he doesn't want the parents to be allowed to support them. He wants it hidden from the parents. It is just, this is again the separation that the government is trying to do between parents and children. Of we're going to support them, we're going to do this for them, we're going to hide them from the parents. Okay, sorry, I said I wasn't going to comment, but I did because he just said it right there.
Choose together.
Sheriff Chad Bianco, I know you have a very different perspective on this.
Yes. I mean, since he took over this position, talking about mental health, 70% increase in mental health issues in high school, or I mean, in school-aged children. So there's a huge problem there. And the good thing about talking to a cop, especially a leader of a law enforcement agency, is you absolutely have to get the truth from me. It is impossible for me, unless I want to be fired and removed, for lying. I can't lie as a cop. There's only one of us here that can do that. This bill is absolutely horrible. This bill is absolutely horrible, and it certainly takes away the rights of teachers to inform parents. And what it does is it prevents school districts from having their own rules and laws of saying that teachers will notify parents, or that a teacher can notify a parent. This took away that ability for schools to do that in the event we come up with a policy that says you can no longer talk to the students. This is an end around ridiculous law that, as a parent and as a grandparent, absolutely horrible. That there is no parent in the state that supports
his point
this.
is that students could be forcibly outed to parents who may not be ready for that, and that they could commit suicide as a result. You say what?
We can ifs forever. If we're talking about something that could happen, so we're going to pass a law and we're going to make some policy, that's not the role of government, not even close to the role of government.
Is it the role of government to interfere in the lives of families and their children and to tell them what they should and shouldn't do?
You just did.
You are making the case. You are not as slick as you think, Mr. Thurmond. You are making the case for the other side.
In my head, I'm giving Bianco a standing ovation right now.
Because you're literally making our case, which is the government should not be involved in these decisions, and families. So don't support AB 1955.
Stop passing laws.
Stop passing laws like AB 1955.
Did that by passing 1955.
Do you agree or disagree? I just said that government should not be involved in the lives of our families, and that this is a decision that should get made between parents and their children. Do you agree or disagree?
You're absolutely right, which is why government should stay out of it.
And that's why I support this bill, because it keeps government out of it.
By putting government in.
And it keeps teachers teaching, which is their job.
We've heard from a lot of parents that say this really just muddies the water when it comes to my parental rights. When I drop my kid off at school, whatever that they choose to tell their teacher, that should be relayed to me. So that is their right as a parent. And you say?
The bill does not say that a teacher cannot engage in communication with the parent. It simply says that the district cannot.
I'm pretty sure we read the bill, and that is quite literally what it says you cannot do, is you cannot communicate that. So that's literally what the bill says.
Right.
So any employees of any of these schools cannot notify parents without the consent of the child.
It goes down from like the school board to the district, all the employees. I was reading it again last night, and again, I am not the best at reading the text of these bills because I'm not a lawyer. I don't read stuff like that. But I read it, but I don't know. Like, my mind does not think the way that these bills are authored. But it definitely was or an employee of these governing bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So teachers are absolutely prohibited. I also like that Tony Thurmond said the job of the teachers is to focus on teaching.
Right. I agree, Tony Thurmond.
He's making great points.
The job of the
superintendent
of education would be to focus on education, but
it require teachers to forcibly out a student who might be having questions about their sexual identity.
But if a student says, I want to be known, if I'm a female and I want to be known as the he pronoun now, isn't that what this law says? It prevents the child, or prevents the teacher from notifying the parent of that?
Teachers don't have the experience to make the decisions about who's LGBTQ plus or who isn't.
Sorry.
But again, did he get it? did he get hit on the head before he walked into this? Because he's making the argument, which is like that video we showed of that.
And he knows he's starting to falter here. Like he knows that he
starts to realize he's making the opposite points.
Yes.
But we showed that video of that progressive Democrat who was a teacher who came out and said, we don't have the experience to be, involuntary co-conspirators in this. That's not our job and that's not our role. And we're not mental health professionals. And he's making that case. He's making that case that teachers are not equipped to handle this. So why would you make it a law that they have to do this?
At what point do we expect teachers to start doing investigations about what students we bring teachers in to help them support our kids to learn?
I'm going to say something. Okay. Yes. Kids, adults dealing with these issues of struggling with their identity absolutely can get so, into the rabbit hole of it that they do go into a deep depression and are considering suicide. Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. But what if a kid actually has supportive parents, but you've been a teenager, you know how teenagers are. Like, we like to think that we can solve everything and we know everything and we don't need our parents. Our parents are so uncool when we're teenagers and all that. And I have a great relationship with my teenagers. But what if there was a kid struggling with this and they're Josephine and they're now going by Joe at school, and then they don't know what to do with all of this and they do kill themselves, and parent intervention could have prevented that. I bet that exists in many cases.
Yeah. What happens when that situation happens and they go, well, and the parents go, why, what happened? And they go, well, they did come out to us as transgender. And the parents go, why didn't you tell us? Well, because AB 1955 prohibits us from telling you. So, that's when the lawsuits will really start flying, and then they'll have to back off of this, because if you're holding the school responsible for holding on to this information and then it results in them doing harm to themselves because of that, the lawsuits will fly. That's all I'm saying. So
okay.
Learn. And all this bill says is that when it comes to someone's sexual orientation, that's a personal matter that should be worked out between them and their family.
But there's so many other issues.
Right.
I'm gonna
right. I'm so confused. Is Tony Thurmond in favor? Is he against AB 1955? I think that's why Bianco's just sitting there like.
Maybe he read SB 1955 and not AB 1955.
Maybe he read the wrong bill. I don't know, but he definitely came unprepared to talk about it, because it sounds like and this is the problem with getting a little out over your skis long before the gubernatorial race. Like,
and then there's Phil and his ancient sayings.
What, getting out above?
Yeah, skis. Sorry, carry on. We were already past time, so we got to.
Yeah, this is one of the issues of when you're out on the campaign trail for so long before you give yourself more opportunities to make flubs like this. And you're not running a disciplined principle campaign because it's not narrow in focus. It's not, okay, it's 2 years away. Like, we still have a long time to go before we even start thinking about gubernatorial candidates. Like, yeah, there's a lot who've announced. There's Villa Ragosa, there's Tony Atkins and stuff like that. But this is what happens when you do this, is that you aren't as polished. You create this fodder that now down the line, they can use this clip and be like, well, sounds like Tony Thurmond's is actually opposed to AB 1955. So just a little comment on the politicking of this.
Issues like even a permission slip for a field trip you have to get a parent for. So why would this go to your parent?
Where would parents start? Would they call every time they heard a child use a pronoun? That doesn't mean anything about their sexual orientation. All it does is take away the right of a parent to be there, or a teacher to be a caring adult if the student needs someone to talk to. Teachers are some of our best mentors. You talked about counseling. If I could finish, I brought the resources in so that we can have 10,000 more counselors in our schools so they can get help for the things that impacted them since the pandemic. Why would we take away the right of any caring adult to help a young person who's struggling with their sexual orientation or bullying or any issue.
If they've come out and
But you just said it's not sexual orientation, and now you're saying it is sexual orientation. So,
and this is what we're talking about in school, they're not coming out. They're not being outed. They're already outed. They've already outed themselves. We're just keeping it from their parents. Students don't have rights. Kids don't have rights.
Now, this next part, I think he flubs up a little bit, but that's the problem. You're not a polished politician. But anyway, I think this is a good point that he makes, which is if you're already out and you've already told people you're out, like you've already outed yourself, like, and it's sort of contradictory in the sense of like, well, if you're already out, now you're just keeping it from your family and your parents. Everybody will know except your parents. Like your friends will know, classmates will know.
That's
like,
confusing.
Teachers will know. So like, why is it everybody at school when they're in school knows, but the parents can't know? So I think that's a good point by Bianco, is that it's not like this big secret. It's just they've already outed themselves. So
Rights. I was responsible for my kids. My kids didn't have rights from a law enforcement.
Rights? Kids have rights, really?
Kids, parents are responsible for their children. Are you going to say that they're not?
Well, I think it's both, right? No.
Well, it depends. So I probably misspoke and said, yes, they certainly have rights. They are U.S. citizens. They are humans. They have rights. But parents are responsible for their children.
And that they are their legal guardians.
We don't allow an 11-year-old to decide that he's going to be a dog and act like a dog all day long without the teacher saying, I think we have a problem with your child and their pronouns and what they believe, and you have a right to know what's happening with your child.
I think we just heard a dangerous policy in how you view young people, that they don't have any rights, in comparing them to dogs.
He didn't compare them to dogs.
He didn't. That is like, and this is how you know he's floundering, is because that was a weak ass attempt at trying to take down Sheriff Bianco, where he goes, well, they have no rights, and you compared them to dogs. That's not what he said. He didn't compare them to dogs. Yeah. He said if you wanted to pretend to be a dog all day, then parents should probably know, like, your kid has an issue where he thinks he's a dog. Like, yes. And that's a problem. So, but that's Tony Thurmond's feeble attempt at trying to take down Bianco. I think it's the only attempt he has.
Most of the kids who've been forced to be outed, because they've called me and they've asked me to come to their schools, they have not outed themselves, but someone has decided that they should be outed. Again, that goes against their well-being and their support. And I think it's a reckless policy. And if you're going to be governor of the state,
we could keep talking about this forever, but let's go just more broadly in terms of education. Obviously, during the pandemic, we had learning loss. We had a lot of parents that were frustrated that kids didn't come back to school earlier.
We had the longest school closures in the nation.
So going forward, what is the plan in terms of ameliorating some of that learning loss and improving California schools?
There's no question our students, like adults, were impacted by the pandemic and mental health, and they're dealing with learning gaps that actually existed before the pandemic and got worse. Our state is better positioned than any others to help our kids bounce back. We're giving them extra tutoring, longer school time. We are spending $1 billion a year in arts education, which addresses many things, including our students' academics, reading coaches and specialists to make sure that our kids learn to read by 3rd grade. And we're working to make sure that we get 10,000 more mental health.
I may, it's been a long time since I was a little kid. I think I remember reading before I was in 3rd grade.
Kids learn to read at all different ages. What he just said on paper is fine. Well, not the fact that we're so far behind, but as far as what he's doing to increase help and education. And yes, I think most kids do read like by 1st grade. I think you're reading and like, I know that I have had kids read as early as 4 and as late as 8. I homeschool. That was not a concern for me. I was like, they'll get it, and they did. But Bianco's going to make a great point next. And so, yeah.
health clinicians in our schools to help our kids.
Oh,
We're getting
wait,
free
I'm sorry.
meals.
I want to make a
We
point.
spent
Our schools have been overcrowded for decades now. And we also, obviously, we have a lot of immigration here. I don't know if you guys had that where you lived, but, you know, for the most part, a classroom
New
is.
Jersey.
I don't know.
No, we didn't have that problem in
So-
New Jersey.
It's definitely been a problem in California for decades, already with the overcrowded, and then adding the immigration, where a lot of children, English is not their first language, and a class can pretty much only operate as fast as the slowest kid for the most part, or those kids get left behind. And so I would say that is definitely a California issue of kids learning to read later, because they're, you know, you have one teacher, 30 to 35 students. That's a tough one. So
spent 900 million, you know, we fed 900 million families during the pandemic.
What?
You said there are schools.
What? 900 million
900
families?
million?
900 million families? There's like 33 million people in California, and how many?
You fed
333 million in the U.S.
You California fed 3 times as many people there are in the United States during the pandemic. Maybe we should look into that's why we have a huge deficit.
I think we should look into that.
It's kind of scary that the superintendent of education in California doesn't know how many people are in the state.
Okay. Maybe he meant we spent 900 million.
But
I did look it up and couldn't find an exact answer, but I know that during the pandemic, there was like 11.5 billion in EBT cards that went out to California. It was federal funds, and only 9 billion of them were actually spent, because a lot of people like the cards, which you had even mentioned before. I know you're not on EBT, but like the gas rebate stuff or whatever, it looked like junk mail. So, and these funds do expire, and then they just go back to the federal government. But so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like where this 900 million, because 900 million, 90 million, both of those are inaccurate. But I'm like, is that the money he was talking about? I don't know. Was it 900 million meals? Even that is crazy. I don't need to spend 10 minutes talking about this, but I want to know what the heck he's talking about.
We fed 900 million families. That's impressive. Considering
we cured world hunger.
While we're at it, as superintendent, I cured cancer, which was not my job, but I did it anyway because I'm just such an overachiever.
Were closed longer, we actually took the action to make sure that our schools could open safely so that people could be in school safe from COVID, so they could be learning. We got 1 million computers for our students. I worked on getting $8 billion for broadband to make sure our students can learn. Our schools closed, our kids didn't even have computers. And so I dug in there to make sure that we would get these resources for our kids. I hear you making, blame and platitudes, but I'm very interested if you have a real vision for serving the students of our state, because they need a great deal.
Let me interject and say that we have less than a minute. Yeah. Sheriff, you have hinted at a run for governor in 2026. Are you ready to make that announcement tonight?
No, I'm the sheriff of Riverside County, and for the next several months, my goal is to make sure that Prop 36 is passed and not lied to the public. Apparently, he doesn't know either, but the public has to know that Prop 36 must be passed. And I've read what the Attorney General has now put out in the ballot for the descriptions. It's another lie. It's another Prop 47. We need to combat this.
Maybe 30 seconds on education. Your thought on what he just said.
Well, he historically, he has been a social worker, not an educator. We are the worst in the country when it comes to education. We have the lowest literacy rate for adults. We have, they celebrate 34% of our kids being grade level literate in math and 46% grade level literate in language arts, and they celebrate that. We spend more money per student than anyone in the country, and we are the bottom of the list when it comes to education. And now he wants to spend really waste $14 billion on 75,000 acres of school property. What I want to know, where this entire state needs to be fixed, how does a school have 75,000 acres of real property?
I can address that.
That is $14 billion
Real quickly,
that
this will
they
be the
have
last.
failed.
This will be the last
I can
word.
The
address that.
school has failed to educate our kids, and they waste it spending money on property.
One correction for you, Sheriff. I spent 10 years working in our schools, just to be clear. You don't get to speak for what my career is, just like I wouldn't do that to
Your
you.
record does.
You are someone who has said you would support a president who wants to get rid of the U.S. Department of Education. That would take away resources for kids with disabilities and special education and low-income students. What would
It
you
actually
say?
would. It puts it in the hands of the
May
state.
I
Let him
finish?
finish and-
What would you say
If
to?
it was truthful.
I asked you if you had a vision for education. You didn't give us an answer. You just pointed a finger. I asked you, what's your vision for public safety? You didn't give us an answer. And so I'm sitting here saying I am running for governor. And one of my lead priorities is to build 2.3 million housing units. We are in a housing crisis. And it just so happens that our schools across the state possess 75,000 acres of land that can be developed upon. And schools have done this. They can use surplus property to build for their teachers and classified staff who cannot afford to live where they work. This is a significant opportunity for California communities, and I'm going to help lead it, and I'm going to help lead this state to address housing and homelessness.
Okay.
Okay. So
Final thoughts. I think here's my final thought, because we went way over our normal time. I think if you're Tony Thurmond, you go back to the drawing board, because you got taken to task by Sheriff Bianco, who is not running for governor. He's not a trained politician. He's not a polished politician who's been in the legislature and in the upper halls of Sacramento. He did, and this is us actually looking at what he said, and a lot of stuff he said contradicted what he was trying to prove. A lot of AB 1955. The question of why is the superintendent of education involved in housing and homelessness and all of this stuff. And he's trying to, it's funny, he's saying to Bianco, you're pointing the finger and blaming, but I'm going to turn around and say you didn't propose any solutions to any of these issues. But again, Bianco's not running for governor.
and the whole issue started because Bianco was in uniform endorsing Trump.
Right. So
and Tony Thurmond expected Bianco to come up with a whole plan to save the state. Sounds like, once again, Thurmond's trying to outsource jobs. Like, oh, I don't need to launch the investigation. I don't need it. Like,
I think he thought he was going to roll in there and like wipe the floor with Bianco, and I think he got resoundingly thumped. So who knows? This might be a preview of the gubernatorial race for 2 years already.
yeah, I don't think Thurmond's going to be it.
I don't think Thurmond will be it either. He'll probably, I don't know, out of those who've announced, you have Tony Thurmond, Tony Atkins, Villaraigosa. I don't think so.
And maybe we'll have like a Harris situation. Maybe we'll have someone step in 4 months prior to the election.
Maybe
running for governor.
Maybe Kamala Harris will run. She might be out of a job in 2 years, so who knows? Maybe she runs for governor of California.
Also, I'm confused about this school land. And I mean, I don't live in like, a whole rural area, and maybe there are schools sitting on acres and acres, but like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm picturing they're building housing on like the football fields. And so I'm just wondering like I don't literally mean that, but like for real, what is the land currently being used for across these schools? Is it their PE time? Is it their what? Like maybe it's not being used at all, but I would like to know more about that.
Question.
So
why is the government holding on to so much real property and then claiming we don't have enough housing?
Yeah.
It's a good question. All right. Well, we went way over. Any other final thoughts before we look? All right. This is a jam-packed episode. Got a lot to get through the rest of the way until the presidential election. We still got propositions. We haven't even dove into the propositions. We'll probably have to do several episodes on that because there's so many. We'll probably have to break it into a couple different episodes. More candidates. more people coming on. So it's going to be a busy stretch from here until November. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, review, all that stuff so people can learn more about California politics, what's happening right now. And the best thing you can do that is 100% free that you can support this show is share it with someone here in California. If you're a California voter, share it with them. Let them know there's a show that will inform you about California politics. And we'll see you on the next one. Have a good night. Later.